setting up that. Behind you, we're going to be live on Facebook. So maybe we have a lot of people watching on Facebook. So are we good, Mike? We're doing the same thing. So welcome everybody. Thanks for coming to the Stone Harbor Museum for our first open mic night of the season. We were planning on yacht club and Deschamps and sailing history, and I guess note to self, we won't plan when the wetlands is doing something else the same night. But we did plan our schedule back in January, and this is what we put on for now, and we're hoping a lot of people would want to hear about the sailing history of Stone Harbor, because it's huge from all the research I've been doing. So I'm going to start with, this is all the Deschamps, and I have, Laurie Deschamps was going to come, but could not make it. It's coming later in the summer to do an oral history for us. But he did write to us and gave me a written story of his father and parents' history of their love of sailing and their time in Stone Harbor. So I can read that to you a little bit, and then I have a little video to play, and then we'd love to hear any stories anybody has, if you have any sailing stories. So here's what Laurie wrote regarding his father and his love of sailing. And Laurie is Edme's son, for anyone that doesn't know, Edme Deschamps. So he said, Edme's love of boats perhaps had its initial glimmer when he and his mother went on a round-the-world tramp steamer trip that ended with both living for several years in Paris, France. There he went to school, but focused his attention on boats, visits to coastal ports to see, sketch, and model the old tonneau sailing fishing boats. He also built a model of his sailboat of dreams, not too different from his future love, Bebe. As a young man before married, Edme had a summer apprenticeship with Mathis Boatyard in Camden, where he drafted lines of old schooners and workboats of New Jersey and the Chesapeake. One of Mathis' principals was John Trumpy, subsequently moved and opened his own boat building business in Annapolis, Maryland, under the name Trumpy Boatyard, to manufacture elegant large powerboat yachts that today are regarded as classics. During World War II, they built series of PT boats, and the original 1851 America's Cup boat, America, was stored at the Trumpy property, but destroyed by a storm. By 1937, Edme married his high school sweetheart, Irene Crawford, nicknamed Babe. She was the youngest of 4 sisters. He got his big itch to build a boat by building a 28-foot sloop, the Irene D, in their living room in Ridley Park. His father-in-law provided the lumber for the project. Edme had always favored Stone Harbor throughout his youth summers, and by 1947 decided to move there and start his own boatyard. In the beginning, he partnered with a friend, James Sword, and together they purchased property on 81st Street, North Basin, to begin Sword and Deschamps Boatyard. After a few years, however, the partnership broke up, and Edme bought Sword's part of the business, and Deschamps Boatyard was off and running on its own. As it was being developed, Edme and Babe purchased a new built home at 9901 Corinthian Drive. While the house was being built, the Irene D served as our temporary home and was moored at the developing boatyard on 81st Street. The boatyard started first with construction of the Quonset hut that initially served for building small boats. Later, another building was constructed that provided the machine shop, then later still a shop for reconditioning propellers. A marine railway was built next to the Quonset building for hauling boats for repair for dry winter storage. Next were 2 long sheds built along the street from the Quonset for storing boats for winter servicing. More sheds were then erected behind this large enclosure along 80th Street, and still more winter storage for a dedicated paint shop. The last building to be constructed was the wood shop on 81st Street next to the Marine Railway, where fabrication of larger boats, the catamarans, etc., were produced. Regarding Edme's dedication to sailing, besides building moths and cheetah cats for club members, Edme was always responsive to fixing boat damages regardless of type, comets, G14, sailfish, sunfish, etc. He and Babe always had Deschamps' boatyard ready to help all club members, young and old, to get them back in the water and back to quickly racing their boats again. Edme helped maintain club dinghy park equipment, specifically the boat dock hoist used by cheetahs and comets. Edme raced his cheetah cats, named Wild Thing, and others too, to help promote the racing spirit within the club. His last race was the summer before he passed away at the age of 82. Babe also contributed to the spirit of club racing, not only by racing with Edme as crew until her health issues prevented her from hiking and handling the jib. She nevertheless remained in charge of the end of the race celebrations with rounds of drink at the club bar. Bebe, this is a story of Bebe. During the 1960s, Edme became good friends with one of his long-standing customers who owned a beautiful Choi Lee model Rob yawl with 2 masts of a sailboat. Edme eventually purchased the boat, and she became Edme and Babe's own pride and joy. They named the boat Bebe, French for Babe. Bebe was a black-hulled beauty, built of teak throughout, with lots of varnished bright work. During the later 1970s and most of the 80s, Edme and Babe, with their cat Fearless, would cruise south down the inland waterway to Florida during winter months. They often joined other cruisers making the same run south, many snowbirds from Canada having fun and sharing experiences at various marinas along the way. Edme and Babe always began and ended their yearly cruises with stopovers in Annapolis, where their son Laurie and wife Debbie and children conveniently owned a home on Weems Creek and an open slip always waiting for Bebe. In between cruises, Bebe, Edme, and Babe also found many opportunities to sail with friends and family on charter boats in the Caribbean and the Virgin Islands to St. Martin and beyond. Without a doubt, sailing has been a highlight for the Deschamps family. Edme's legacy includes inspiring his son Laurie to have his own lifetime loving and pursuing sailing. Laurie and his family settled in the sailing capital of Annapolis, Maryland, living on the water on Weems Creek, just upriver from the United States Naval Academy. Laurie and his wife Debbie, who grew up summering in Stone Harbor, have spent over 50 years racing and cruising on the Chesapeake, in Maine, as well as many charters in the Caribbean and Greek islands. Laurie's boats have ranged from racing an Olympic Tornado catamaran, built by Edme, and larger cruising sailboats. For over 40 years, he and his family have enjoyed sailing their beautiful Bristol 35.5-foot, most often with groups of friends on their boats. Laurie and Debbie have been active members of the Sailing Club of the Chesapeake, an organization dedicated to promoting the sport of sailing, cruising, including yachting, racing, and social meetings. Laurie and Debbie's son Chris grew up in Annapolis, learning to sail various smaller racing craft, prams, laser, and sailboards, and became an instructor at Severn Sailing's Association and its very large and active youth sailing program. So this was all what was sent to us from Laurie when we asked him to give a little summary of his father's love of sailing and how things started with the boatyard. There's a whole lot more that he sent, but I just wanted to give you a little glimpse of what that was. And these were some of the great pictures of what went on with the boatyard, or of one or both of them sailing. I have a little quick little video to show you, and Jim Talone had created this several years ago that I wanted to just go over real quick. That's kind of fun. Oh, shoot.
The 50s were an exciting time for Stone Harbor. Like the
That's so bizarre. That's where I stopped. This just went completely wrong. Sorry about this. Wait a minute. Let me see if I can get that. There. All right.
Sailed in the regattas of the local yacht club. In the 60s, he built 37 Cheetah Cats, a 14-foot catamaran. Sailors loved them for their speed and lightweight. A large fleet of Cheetah Cats raced at the yacht club, including Ed May and his wife Babe on Spitfire. For over 30 years, Edme not only enjoyed racing the Kitty Cat, but was always on hand with parts and advice to hold the fleet together. Today, you can view parts of the original Kitty Cat at the Stone Harbor Museum. The most prestigious boat he built was the Yankee Flyer, a C-class catamaran. After beating the American competition, he won the right to challenge Great Britain in the 1968 Little America's Cup race. They packed the boat into a container and shipped it to England with all of Stone Harbor cheering them on.
When I was a teenager in the 1950s, my summers were spent at the yacht club. My friends and I sailed, raced our boats on Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and just hung out. The highlight for all sailors was Regatta Weekend, a 2-day event, both racing and social. Sailboats of many classes descended on the yacht club. Having 100 to 150 boats registered was the norm. I sailed a one-man moth with a red and white sail, so my parents could spot me, usually toward the end of the fleet. Saturday night was the regatta ball, a big social event for the teenagers. I always came to the shore with a special dress in case I was asked to the ball. It was a wondrous night to be there, all dressed up with the band playing and the breezes through the windows. The yacht club remains a grand old lady, still young at heart.
So that was, I don't know exactly when, but that's something that kids were. So regarding the Deschamps, now you live on Corinthian. Did you say who lives on Corinthian? Oh, you did, and so you live near them.
Yes, across the street.
Oh, okay. And so you had said they had a few wild parties, or yacht club. They entertained a lot of yacht club people there.
They did, and not while I was in there, it was probably earlier than that. But they did have a group of people that would meet somewhere around Nummy Island, and Babe always referred to it as a gun hole, and they would have cocktails.
Oh, okay. No fun.
After they sold the boatyard, they kept their boat, this yawl that Laura's talking about, in a separate place. And the boat then, Edna said the boat had been built in Singapore.
Oh.
And he spent every day over at the boat, sanding and varnishing and just, you could tell he just loved every minute to be there.
Oh, wow.
And because Babe was so little, he built a step on the dock so that she could step up and get over into the boat to be with him.
Oh, so she was much shorter than him, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's neat. Well, it's certainly.
Not that anybody was that tall.
Okay.
It's just that she was very short.
Exceptionally short. Okay. Okay. Did anyone else know them or know who they were, or?
I knew who they were, but I didn't
Yeah.
really know them.
Yeah. Okay. So what I also have here is a little 10-minute clip. Jim Wren had done an oral history in 2012, and he was a great lover of sailing, and he talked about early sailing. And so I thought this was just a really neat clip to share with everybody on. Hopefully it'll be loud enough. Just some really neat early Stone Harbor and yacht club and sailing history.
I'm Jim Wren. I now live in Stone Harbor, but I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, Havertown to be direct. And I was born into a family that was very good to me because my mom and dad bought a house down in Stone Harbor back in '32. I was just out of the box at that point. And they bought a place in Stone Harbor on the water for $1,500. And as things warmed up, we wound up with a house on the water and in Stone Harbor, and worth a whole lot more than that. a cheetah cat, the last cheetah cat that was built by the local boat builder, Edme and May Deschamps. And for both Phil, Stump, and I, they were there. They made that polite period of almost 20 years just something out of a book. I mean, the boat was easy to sail. It would get up and go, and by that time, I'm now getting close to retirement. I was wound up living in close by in Millville, where I ran a small subsidiary for a larger company, and left there, took them down to Stone Harbor when I was about. I've been coming ever since I was 2 years old, but now we've had a house, and we're here for good. And we've been about 26 years, not all that living here, but about 20 years that we actually retired and live on the water, on the yacht club basin. So we were always close to means to sail and to race. And when Bill and I were kind of through with the cheetah cat, it kind of ran its life. We said, hey, we'd like, we just stumbled onto this. We thought, well, why don't we get to the museum? Let's use a garage, which was at that time was over your head. It was just stuff from the school, which this is their property, and they allowed us to refurbish this garage, and we had about 8 or 10 people that joined us, and our mission was to get as many of the 13 boats that go back to 1930, and between 1930 and today, there are 13 one-design boats, different designs, that have sailed in backwaters and raced in backwaters. And back in those days, before the Comet, which was the first one-design boat, they had a flock of sailboats, but none of them were built the same. They weren't the same specs or anything, so you had to handicap them all. But they got tired of that. Around 32, there was a show up in New York City. It just so happened that they found the design of this Comet that could be built and sold for a couple $100, and an average carpenter couldn't have to be a boat builder. And so the group of people from the yacht club of Stone Harbor went up, saw that could put them in the position that they wanted to be in, where all the boats were saying the sailors were different. And they started out in 33 and 34. Most of them didn't get a carpenter or do it themselves. And, it became, because it was the first one that asked for an association of this group of boats now, foreseeing in the future that they could be sailing out of Avalon, Cape May, and all over the states, as it turns out. They got the #1 association certification, which people in Stone Harbor boys said, hey, we've got the #1 fleet. We did have #1 fleet, but didn't mean that we were the best sailors. But the Comet took a hold very quickly, and they were, when I reached teenage, just pre-teenage, I had the best thing in my life. I was swimming with a friend down on another inlet or basin, And from across the basement, a young guy, an older guy, probably 6 years old, told me Pete Payne called and said, "Hey, Ren, do you want to sail? Well, you want to crew for me?" Well, I could have walked across the water with that. That's where I learned to sail, was the crew for a fellow that had a Comet in the first race. First racing that they did with one design boat, which means they don't all look exactly alike, but the critical dimensions make those boats, once you get them, as fast as this, all of them, no matter what they look like, in the color. That's how I got into sailing, really. Although I did have the sun race for a couple more years after that. I got the Cheetah Cat in 1984-ish. I was going down to Deschamps Boat Works and eyeing this Cheetah Cat. He was holding for somebody down in North Carolina where they had a couple of boats, which was that guy kept putting off, I can't get this yet. Anyway, finally, the boat builder there said, "Hey, I think you can get it this year." So I bought that, and that was the beginning of the best kind of sailing of my whole life up to this day. The Cheetah Cat had about 10, 12 boats. Probably had 7, 8, 9 sailing each race. And we just became a kind of sailing group that chemistry was good. The boat was a great boat to sail. You didn't have to worry about too much wind very often, or not enough wind. They sat with pontoons, which was built on. It made a boat that could get up and go when you had the wind. You didn't, I almost said, you can't turn them over, except we had a couple people had to flip them over, but it wasn't easy. Bill's admitting he did, but it was a great family book. But when Ed May died, well, it was both building down 80, the second city third, was then closed down. He had taken off Ed May had taken off a few years before he died. And the boats just needed, they were down 20 years, I guess. And started showing their age. And a few years later, that was the end of the. But they were great boats to sail. Had parties, Rich Richard. They handled so easy. You could get up and go. You could tack like a fishing lead. Into the wind, which we all, the Cheetah Cat sailor said that you can't do that in the Hobie Cat, which outsold the Cheetah Cat by 1,000 to 1, I guess. It was racing in the ocean, but around 3 buoys. We were always racing around 2 or 3, 4 buoys, and that meant a lot of tacking, sailing into the wind, off the wind by 30 degrees or what have you, but to tack. And it just was, never get tired. It was stable, and even when it was excessive wind, you might toss hair to the wind and you sail anyway. But it was a great boat.
So that was, without a doubt, somebody that loved sailing, his whole life. Sandy, do you want to share anything about your sailing experience? I know
Sure.
you had.
Well, first of all, I lived next to Jim. His original house was on the bay.
On
Almost
87th.
at 87th and Sunset.
Mhm.
And I lived in Bowen's house, which was next door,
Oh, sure.
at 8625, and their house is still there. His house has been demolished, a big house has grown up, but, yeah, I lived next door, and I think it was his nephew, Chris, he used to race them off, which is what I raced. The single boats that you saw in those videos are, they, with the M, that was the moth
I
class.
thought that was, okay.
And at that time, maybe I can't, back here. And at that
Do you want to
time,
come up and
the
talk?
moth class was a huge class, at the yacht club. Actually had more boats than the Cheetah or the Comet. And
Was
they,
it single? You only needed one?
yeah,
Sarah?
and that was, I brought 3 of the older yearbooks, but the pictures you have are much better than these, actually. And they were a single hull, but with a cockpit that you could sit in, not like a sailfish where you sat on top. And, yeah, 1-person boat, except with heavy wind, you could take a crew. You were allowed to take a crew. But like he said, so many variations came about. The only thing that was kind of standard with the moth was the length of the boat had to be a certain length. But the original moths were like one hull, just like this. But then they came out with a better design, and the keel and the boat went like this at the bottom. And so they were much faster than I sailed the other kind. And so they had 2 classes, an A class and a B class, for the moth. But like I said, that was, I was a teenager then, and that was, they were huge, the classes. Each one of those classes, probably had a dozen or more in each one of the A and B. So it was the largest. So at that time, it was the moth, and then the next one up, the sailfish were just coming on. The next one up was a penguin. And they were also open cockpit, one hull, but larger than a moth. And then the Comet. And then the Cheetah Cat came after that. And then the sailfish came. The sailfish came, I guess, it was probably the mid-60s that it got really big. And the sailfish was a lot easier to take care of. The people that I was with, the Bowens, he actually built his own sailfish. It's pretty easy to do, but no cockpit, so you had to be careful about sliding off. But again, 1 person would sail it, 2, you could have a crew with 2. And I just brought these they only started the yearbook at the yacht club, I think in '61, an actual yearbook. And so I brought these, I didn't know she was going to have such good pictures, but I'll just pass them around. But in here, they have, all the classes. So you can see, some have 2 people, some have 1. And, this year is 63, that was my best year. I finished first in the B class.
Oh, are you in the yearbook?
Well, my name
Are your
is,
stats in there?
yeah, well, they have the stats for the end of the season, and I think it was this year. Yeah, my maiden name was Lessig, and so I finished first in the B class. And this is actually me when I was sailing them off. It's not a very good picture, but
Oh, that's
put that in
great.
there.
I'll pass that. Yeah, we'll pass that around there.
And these have pictures in as well. But Stone Harbor was really well known for their sailboat classes, and of course the Comet, and then the Cheetah Cat, and the Moth. And I did go to a couple of regattas in Wildwood, and of course Stone Harbor hosted a lot of regattas as well. And there would be dozens and dozens. And Moths and Comets were the biggest classes of
So
sailboats then.
there were other clubs that came?
Oh, yeah, other yacht clubs,
Ah.
they would come, and then, we would go, and we didn't go far, we would just get towed, like over to Wildwood, we would get towed. Whereas if you went to any regattas any further than that, you would have to, they would truck you up, but we didn't do that. But probably one of the best stories I have of sailing was I was out for a practice sail with one or two other people. And most of the routes that we used, and of course, when they had the races was dependent on the tides. So I think sometimes you can notice, you think, well, why aren't there any races out there today? Well, either if it was really low tide, like today, it's low tide all day, high tide right now, then the races would be up in the Great Sound. So they would tow the boats mostly up there, and we'd race up there, so you wouldn't see them along here. Now, Friday night, it was a beautiful night in high tide, and they actually had races Friday night. I don't know if any of you noticed them. It's not normal to have the races in the evening, but they were Friday night. The Comets went out, I know that. I don't know if any other classes went out or not. But because, I don't know how much you know about the configuration back here, but the dogleg, which comes along the front of the bay, and then as you approach the end up near the marina, the channel goes to your left, and we would call that the dogleg. And usually, of course, one of the buoys would be up there, and then out that way would be another buoy, and then come back and around. And many times it was two laps of that. But the winds and the tides definitely affected which course they would use. We had 5 or 6 courses that you might use for a race. But I was out for a practice sail with somebody else, and we were going up the dogleg, and it was really windy that day. And I don't know how many of you have sailed, but when you want to turn, tack, or come back, we would call it, you're going to come about. And to come about, you would throw the rudder over, and the sail would flip over, and you'd have to go to the other side, quickly. And you could also, what they would call jibe. And jibing is when you pull the rudder towards you, which is not as safe because the sail flips across the boat a lot faster. And if you're not quick and it catches wind, you're over. And the moth could tip, sailfish could tip. As he mentioned, the cheetah cat, the comet, usually did not tip over. Could, but usually did not. But the moth and the sailfish could. But we were going out the dogleg, and it was very windy. And my friend and I, we were afraid to come about because there was some kind of fish, and we were young, maybe 16, 17 years old, and there was something following us with a fin. And it turned out to be a porpoise, of course. But we were afraid to come about because we were afraid if we tipped over, we thought it was a shark. And so we just kept going and going and going and not turning to come back. And, I don't know how far, we went out really, really far, and people were worried that we were, not coming back. But we were afraid to turn around because we thought this was a shark following us. And then it went past us, and it was just a dolphin. But that was probably one of the scariest times I ever had. A lot of exciting times. We had, one time we were out, and a hurricane hit while we were out. And you think, well, you had enough notice. But of course, back then you didn't have as much notice. But most of the boats got washed up into the marshes, and the boat there's always patrols out, motorboats out watching, and they just kept telling all of us, go into the marshes, put your sail down, and just sit there, which is what we did. And then as the hurricane passed, in the eye of the hurricane, then they towed all of us in. But it could get hairy out there. Once you leave, the safety in front of here was pretty good in front of the houses. But when you go out the dogleg, then you're really out there kind of without any quick help, except they'd have the motorboats coming around. And again, if you boat, that one whole area, once you get near the marina, that's all sandbar in there. And so obviously if it was low tide, the course could not use the buoys that were in around that sandbar. You had to go, it's a very narrow channel that goes up there. So again, if it's a low tide, there would be one course that would take us through Muddy Hole Creek, over by Scotch Bonnet, and then out up into the bay up in that area. But again, we mostly took that course. That was on the course sheet when it was high tide. Because when it was low tide, you have to worry about running aground. Because you have a centerboard, which the centerboard, if the wind, again, I don't know how many of you sail, but if the wind is coming against your sail this way, you don't want the whole boat to be sliding over that way, and the centerboard keeps you from doing that. And so that's down. And so if you have to pull that up because it's low tide, then, you're not as accurate when you're, especially if you have to tack, which is, if you're sailing into the wind, you have to tack. So you have to go zigzag back and forth so that the wind is against your sail. Now, if the wind's coming from behind you, then that's what you're on a run. And that's where the sail can be completely perpendicular to your boat, and the wind is coming behind you and just pushing you along. And then you can have your centerboard up because you're going in one direction. So, there's a lot of things that come into play, when you're out there. Again, the tides and the wind, of course. But it was a fun time. It was I was maybe 15, 16, 17 years old when I did most of my racing. After I graduated from college, I was no longer doing that. But
Now, when you were out in the water, were other classes of boats all at the
Yes.
same time?
yes, but you had
And so
different
how
start
did that-
times.
Oh, okay. So you
yeah,
weren't all interacting?
No, you had different start times. But of course, depending upon the class, I mean, the Comet and the Cheetah Cat were much faster. So those classes usually got off first because they would stay ahead of us.
Mhm.
But yeah, we were out there with usually moths, and then moths, sailfish, penguins, comets, and the Cheetah Cat. Everybody raced on the same day, and the starts were usually right in front of the yacht club.
Right. Yeah, it must have gotten chaotic though.
Well, yeah, it could get chaotic.
Yeah.
And again, there's no, you used to bump into each other, but there's no real, penalty for that. I mean, obviously, you don't want to wreck your boat or somebody else's.
Mhm.
But, there is a right of way, who has the right of way. And usually the boat that is leeward, the boat that doesn't have the best wind at that time or in their tack, has the right of way because they don't have as much control. When you're full steam ahead and you have control, you do have to make way. And going around the buoys, that, an experienced sailor, the better you can get around the buoy, the better you're going to be in the race. And that's where you can sometimes make up for lost time and get ahead of people. So there's a lot of jockeying around, you're not like 10, 15 feet apart. You're like right next to each other when you're going around the buoys. So, but a fun time, that's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for Sandy?
Yeah, Sandy, you still sail?
Yes,
When's the last time you were out?
last year, actually, I was out on a sailfish. I had a sailfish for, actually, Mr. Bowen, Jim Bowen, God rest his soul, he built it. And I just, last year was the last year for the sailfish. But that's what I would go out on, was a sailfish. Still sail. I mean, once you know how to sail, like I said, it's like riding a bike. I had, so, and I taught my kids how to sail. They liked it. They never got into, the racing or anything like that, but I enjoyed going out for a sail once in a while. So, and our permanent house was up in Pennsylvania, and we were near Blue Marsh Dam, which is a huge, huge lake, and we used to sail up there as well, sailfish. But yeah, I haven't been out at all since last year, since we sold the sailfish. Very peaceful thing to do, is to go out sailing, just really peaceful.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing. Thank you. Anyone else have any yacht club or sailing anecdotes they want to share? Stories? Yes.
Well, my ex-wife and I bought Deschamps Boatyard from Ed May in 1977.
Oh, okay.
We got married right out of college in 1970, and I worked for a big corporation and moved around for a while. And we both decided we didn't want to move around anymore. We had met down here at the shore, so we came down, and Ed May had a good place in the market. To be honest, we bought it more as a real estate investment than anything else because it was going to be condos someday.
Mhm.
And it is.
Uh,
So you knew even then.
But we figured we figured it would take 7 to 10 years before the market was ready, but it lasted about 5. But to be honest, you couldn't pay off a mortgage with the boatyard only working on sailboats. So at that time, J&J sold, and we got the Johnson franchise and Dixie Boat franchise. But most of Ed May's income was really from the power boats he took care of.
Oh, okay.
Now, and he was a wooden boat guy. He was really good with wood, but he really didn't have much use for fiberglass, other than it's what people were making boats out of.
That's what was coming in.
So
Yeah.
there were enough skilled guys that worked up there for him to take care of the wooden boats that were still around, and we could maintain the cheetah cats, and we kept all the parts for all the sailboats. We sold sunfish and sailfish parts. We sold hobie cat parts, and we did okay and fine. But when interest rates in the late 70s, early 80s went up to 20%, there was no way you could get financing for any kind of improvements because you couldn't show the income to do it. Plus, the borough was assessing the condo rates, and so it made sense to sell it. And we sold it to a conglomerate that had a syndicate. They had their own money. They didn't have to borrow money to get going, but they had a hard time getting going.
Did they buy it? Did they build condos then at that point, or
Yes.
was it they?
Yeah, they bought it for condos. We didn't really want. Well, we couldn't develop it then because you couldn't get the money. But since they were a syndicate and everybody just invested in it,
Right.
there was they weren't paying an interest rate.
Right. Now, did you keep the Deschamps name, or you had your own
We kept
name?
it the same.
You kept it on there. Okay. Oh, that's neat.
Somewhere around here, there's a bunch of pictures of
Yeah.
just before it closed.
You could go to Deschamps for anything, like if you had a tear in your sail, they either sell you a kit to fix it yourself, or they would fix it.
Yeah.
Or if you lost a part of your rudder or your
Yeah,
tiller.
we tried to.
He had everything.
He had stocked just about anything that the yacht club used, and then we added hobie cat parts after that because by then they were going crazy down at the point.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
Right.
they were racing them down there and everything. So, but we lived over in Corinthian Drive for 20-some years. That's where my 2 kids grew up, and they had power boats and sailboats. They never did much in the yacht club after they went through all the sailing schools with the prams and that. And actually, my oldest son sailed on the high school sailing team.
Oh, okay.
But
With
they
the
never
yacht
got
club or the high school?
the high school.
But
They never got interested in the yacht club activities. They preferred the beach. They were surfers, and we had a hobie cat that they liked to sail.
Oh, nice.
But it's a shame couldn't keep it as a business, but the timing didn't work out.
Supporting it, yes. Yeah. Well, what's your name?
Bill Cathcart.
Hi, Bill. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming and sharing.
Yeah,
Some
for
of
those of you
you,
that don't know, though, when you drive into the marina, all those townhouses, condos or whatever, all on the left side of the road, the south side. That's where Deschamps and all their buildings were.
that was were you driving the town? That was the
No,
lumberyard.
driving
No, when you're driving into the marina.
Marina.
Okay, you're right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're
right
at,
where the
where-
condos are.
so right where Smugglers were, right across that basin,
Yeah, that's everything I read. He just kept everything in stock for any of the sailors at the yacht club, which
And
was a
the
lot.
guys, I used to give the guys off on Sunday in the summertime because if somebody came in and needed their boat fixed on Friday or Saturday, you could get them back on the water. If they came in Sunday, we weren't going to help them that weekend. And it's a long summer. The guys they work long hours in the summer, so I gave them off Sunday. But I'd go up and tend the store just for sailboat people. But you didn't get many. Maybe you had 4 or 5 people come in. I need one of these.
Right, right.
But I could sit there and watch the launching ramp, which was really fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's really neat.
Lots of good adventures there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
That's how I got down here. I've been here ever since.
And you stayed. Oh, that's,
Well,
I can see
after
why.
after we sold it, eventually I needed to find another job. And I ended up working for the MUA they were just starting up the sewer plants, and I'm an engineer by training, so.
okay.
So I ended up working for them for 33 years.
Oh, wow. Well, there's lots to do down here if you look for it, I guess, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, my ex-wife and I made the decision that we wanted to raise the kids here, and I could have made a lot more money going somewhere else, but I wouldn't have lived here.
Sure.
So it works out fine. I got a decent pension,
Right,
didn't have a real high-pressure job, and
good trade-off, and here you are at the shore. So, I just want to emphasize one thing. So what you saw with Jim Wren was what we call oral histories that we try and do. Jim Talone has done a lot. We haven't been doing them recently. I know, Terry, you were involved for a while doing them as well. And we have some great oral histories of people, and, you know, it kind of stopped at a period of time. And we're so glad to have them, and we just put them all up on Vimeo this year, and, you know, and I've been watching them all, and that's what's gotten this all fresh in my mind. All the storytelling we do here is all the things we want to be recording, and so I can't stress enough that anybody that just wants to share their stories, it's for posterity. That's what the museum's for. It's not just physical artifacts, it's the stories, and so the stories can live on and people hear about them. So if anyone, you know, wants to share their stories in this type of format, we would love to do it, and if we have enough interest in this, we'll try and set up like a regular day, whether we'll do them on Thursday mornings, or, you know, we'll pick a day and time like that. But you know, some of these people were longtime Stone Harbor people that we were making sure that we got along the way, and now it's kind of, you know, you don't have to have been here your whole life since 1930. Even if you've been here since 70 or whatever, it's still a lifetime that people are here and have so many memories, because we say today is tomorrow's memories. You know, today will be history one day. And we can't just keep focusing on what was 100 years ago or what was 50 years ago or whatever. As much as we want to capture as much as we can for those that are still around, we need to keep capturing today as well. So, you know, that's why we do our open mic nights and our story sharing, and we also want to continue our oral histories like you saw for Jim Wren. So if anyone wants to share, we can certainly set something up so we have that, whether people do in their homes, if they have an older home, or they want to come in here, you know, we're very flexible on that. So I just wanted to stress on that. We'd love to hear more stories if you want to share. Any other yacht club, sailing, anything anyone wants to share? Well, thanks so much for coming. This was fun listening to stories, and Sandy, thanks for sharing your little tidbits. We loved enjoying hearing that, and your book stuff. Please help yourself to anything in the back, and that's it. So thank you. Yes.